Consider this. During major events, it's often the smallest details that make all the difference. Take the 1986 Challenger disaster, for example. A cheap O-ring failure led to the tragic loss of 7 lives and cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Similarly, a tiny blood clot, barely visible under a microscope, can block blood flow to a crucial part of the brain and be fatal. Even a small patch of ice on the road can cause a car to spin out of control and result in a deadly accident. The list goes on. Seemingly insignificant factors can have devastating consequences for significant endeavors. Marriage certainly falls into the category of important undertakings. Personally, I hold my marriage in the highest regard. I've been married for just over 8 years to my wonderful wife, Laura. We have 2 fantastic boys, Jake and Ryan. Although I didn't finish college, my skills as a mechanic have given us a comfortable life in a spacious home. Despite the long hours I put into my job, the financial stability it brings makes it worthwhile. My marriage has always been the centerpiece of my life, and I've worked tirelessly to support my family. Unfortunately, it's often the small things that can unravel significant commitments. In my case, it was a tiny blood vessel in my brain that led to disaster. Its proximity to another vessel caused swelling, triggering a debilitating migraine headache. I had one such episode on a particularly fateful day. The symptoms were all too familiar: sensitivity to light, escalating sounds, and unbearable smells. The sudden excruciating pain caught me off guard. Without my inhaler, I had no way to ease the agony. While I had pills, they weren't as effective and took time to work, leaving me unable to function. I stumbled into my boss's office to deliver the bad news. He immediately took action, calling his secretary Lisa and instructing her to get me home safely, insisting I shouldn't drive. "For heaven's sake, go now," he urged. With Lisa's help, my boss carefully guided me out of the office and down the hallway toward the exit. Once outside, Lisa helped me lean against the wall, shielding my eyes from the harsh light as she fetched her car. I kept my eyes shut tightly and pressed my hands against my temples, trying to dull the throbbing pain. As we drove, my vision blurred, and the light became unbearable, forcing me to keep my eyes shut. The sounds around me turned into an overwhelming buzz, and the foul smell made my stomach churn. Thankfully, Lisa knew the way to my house, so I didn't need to give directions. It felt like an eternity, but eventually she pulled up outside my home, helped me out of the car, and guided me inside. I followed her lead, barely able to walk on my own. Once in the kitchen, I asked Lisa to get my inhaler from the refrigerator. She placed it in my hand and held it steady as I administered it into my nose, inhaling deeply as the medication entered my bloodstream. Then, I asked her to help me to the living room adjacent to the kitchen and onto the sofa. I requested she draw the blinds and turn off all the lights, which she promptly did. After a few minutes, I began to feel some relief, so I assured Lisa she could leave. Gratefully, I thanked her for her help and welcomed the peace and quiet as she left. I must have drifted off quickly as the pain eased because I woke later to the sound of voices. The room was shrouded in darkness, signaling it was likely later in the day. When I recalled my surroundings, I realized the pain had vanished, leaving me feeling sore but relieved from the remnants of the migraine. Taking a moment to sit up cautiously, I waited, half expecting the pain to return, but it didn't. Thank God. In the dimness, I recognized the voices of my wife, Laura, and her friend Megan. It seemed they were unaware of my presence given the darkness and the lights being off. Perhaps Laura assumed I was resting after coming home early. Though my car wasn't parked in the driveway, she probably didn't realize I was here at all. Maybe I could surprise them both. I rose quietly, planning to sneak to the door and then make my presence known. But as I tuned into their conversation, I heard Megan say, "Come on, Laura, how was it? Was it as good as before? Give me the details, girl." "It was amazing," Laura replied. "I felt like I was in heaven, even better than last time, I swear. Almost mind-blowing, the best physical engagement ever." "Better than with Jake? Better than your husband?" Megan asked, intrigued. "Hell yes," Laura responded. "I adore Jake, but he never made me feel like that. Never. I would let him do those things. He'd think I'm a tramp. But Matt, he knows, and I like it. Can't wait for next time." "Aren't you afraid Jake will find out? Have you considered the consequences?" Megan asked, sounding worried. "Jake will never know, And even if he did, so what? He's too nice to leave me. He wouldn't risk losing the kids. I'd take them in a heartbeat with a good lawyer, Laura said confidently. This isn't like you, Laura. It's worrying. I think you're making a big mistake, Megan cautioned. I love Jake truly, but I won't give up what I have with Matt. I want both, the passion with Matt and the love with Jake. I need both, and I won't let go, Laura declared. Though the migraine had subsided, the ache in my heart was far worse. It gripped me so tightly that my stomach knotted, and each breath felt like a struggle. A ringing filled my ears, and my pulse thundered in my head. Fear surged through me, as if a heart attack loomed, and I clung to the door frame until some semblance of calm returned to my body. Still, I kept my presence hidden, but with each returning moment of control, fury simmered within me, threatening to boil over. With resolve, I straightened and stepped into the illuminated kitchen, shattering the silence. Megan was the first to notice me, her eyes widening in shock as she fell silent. Laura, catching Megan's reaction, turned to see me, her expression shifting from contentment to astonishment, then to dread, and finally to anger, all in an instant. Pushing her chair back, Laura rose to confront me. "How much did you hear? Why were you lurking and spying on me?" she demanded. I met her gaze in silence, then glanced at Megan, who wasted no time in excusing herself. "I need to go. Dave and I can take care of the boys if you need time. I'll call you later," she said before hurrying out the side door. I watched her departure wordlessly. Left alone, I turned my attention back to Laura, the woman I cherished unconditionally for 8 blissful years. 8 years I thought would stretch into eternity, where we'd grow old together. But tonight, that expectation shattered. There would be no forever for us. Laura ended it all tonight. "Where are the boys? What were you up to while you were having your fun with your lover? Did you even think about them? Or were you too busy enjoying yourself with someone else while leaving them unattended?" I demanded, now composed and collected, though the pain still lingered sharp and deep. "It'll take a while for it to ease." Laura's face twisted with anger, masking her beauty with ugliness. Perhaps that mask was the real Laura, hidden beneath the surface all along. She retorted, "The boys are with Jessica. Megan and I went shopping, and Dave watched over them. And I wasn't with anyone else, just Megan." With that statement, she seemed to feel victorious, the anger on her face morphing into satisfaction. Finally realizing I'd been at home, she added, "I didn't expect you to be here." She questioned me. "What are you doing here? Where's your car? Why were you sitting in the dark? Were you spying on me, trying to catch me in the act?" "I came home early with a terrible migraine. George asked Lisa to drive me home because I couldn't handle the light. I took my Imitrex and fell asleep. I've been here ever since." A wave of nausea hit me, and I felt a strong urge to vomit. I quickly rose and headed to the bathroom. "Your voice woke me, and what I heard made me sick. I need the bathroom." With that, I dashed to the bathroom, trying to expel the contents of my stomach. It wasn't entirely successful, but my body certainly tried its best. I ended up on the bathroom floor, finding some relief as my body gradually relaxed against the cool tiles. Finally, my stomach settled, and my breathing steadied. The sweat on my face dried as the nausea faded away. After a few moments, I got up, splashed water on my face, and rinsed out my mouth. Once the trembling subsided and I regained some composure, I returned to the kitchen where Laura was sitting, staring out the window. "I'm going to get the boys and put them to bed tonight," I said, brushing past her. I left the house and made my way next door to the Browns. Dave and Megan Brown were not just our neighbors but our closest friends. We had shared countless evenings together, chatting and enjoying drinks. Best friends, I thought bitterly. I wondered what Dave knew. I should have asked. Knocking on their back door, I entered to find Megan at the kitchen table, talking to her husband. I sensed she had told him. He looked at me with pity in his eyes as I entered, while Megan looked visibly uneasy. "I've come to get the boys. Are they ready to go home?" I bypassed Dave and headed to the living room where I expected the boys to be with Jessica, their teenage daughter. They were gathered around a puzzle, Jessica watching over them. As I walked in, she smiled at me. "Hey, Mr. Johnson, are you here for them?" she asked. I nodded and she said, "I'll grab their jackets." I stood there watching them, overwhelmed by a wave of sadness. These scenes, once filled with everyday joy, now bore the mark of betrayal, the innocence of family life shattered by adult selfishness. often irreparably so. This felt like one of those times. Thanks, Jessica. I'll be in the kitchen when they're ready. I returned to the kitchen where Dave and Megan still sat. I glanced at Megan, then at Dave. Did you both know? Were you aware she was cheating on me, Dave? Did it give you some twisted satisfaction, knowing while we were together? Did it give you a sick thrill? My anger fueled my words, harsher than I intended, but I needed answers from my dear friends. I should have sensed something. Dave shot a glance at Megan, his anger clear before he replied, I swear, buddy, I had no idea. If I had known, I'd have told you right away. I can't believe my wife knew and kept it from me. It's despicable. You don't deserve this. I won't apologize for her, but I'm here for you if you need me. His gaze hardened as he looked at his wife. I believed him. He would have confided in me if he had known. So this was Megan and Laura's secret. Thank you, Megan, I sneered. Thanks for making me a laughingstock, a betrayed man, a fool who didn't need to know his wife was fooling around with another guy. I hope you're happy with yourself, knowing what you knew while thinking of me. I turned as I noticed Jessica approaching, hastily putting on a smile as the boys appeared, each holding a cookie. I silently prayed Jessica hadn't overheard my last words, but her expression suggested otherwise. This would be the last time Megan spent time with my boys. That much I vowed. I didn't know how, but I'd figure it out. We entered through the back door, and the boys ran upstairs to change for dinner. I walked through the empty kitchen into the dimly lit living room where Laura sat, keeping the room shadowed, much like the secret she harbored. Turning on a nearby lamp and pulling back the curtains, I filled the room with light, exposing the shadows of the concealed truths my once loving wife held. Laura looked dreadful, tear-streaked eyes, pale complexion, slouched shoulders. All the defiance had melted away, leaving behind the fearful woman I anticipated. Yet it felt too late for such a transformation. Instead of offering solace, her newfound vulnerability disgusted me. Was she truly remorseful now, or simply scared? I couldn't believe such a drastic change in mere minutes. No, this was the opening move in our power struggle, a deceitful wife hiding her infidelity. Her face betrayed not regret but deception. I confronted her, demanding, "Who is he? What does he offer that I don't?" She remained silent until I was certain she wouldn't respond. As I turned to leave, she finally spoke. "His identity doesn't matter. It's not about you, Jake. I'm deeply sorry you found out like this. I never intended to hurt you. I never wanted you to discover this. I'm truly sorry you heard my conversation with Megan. Please, you must understand." It's funny. No apologies for the act, no remorse for its occurrence. Just regret for being caught and me finding out. I shook my head, sinking into the plush armchair she gave me on our 5th anniversary. I once cherished it, but now it was just furniture. Please let me explain. Our story doesn't have to end here. We can salvage what we had if only you'd try to understand. We could move forward, she pleaded with me, a familiar expression when she desired something I disagreed with. Can you promise it's over? That you'll never see him again? I maintained a calm tone, but my body tensed, hands gripping the chair's arms tightly for control. Laura met my gaze with tear-filled eyes, but offered no reply. That silence spoke volumes. She wouldn't stop seeing him. I heard her words to Megan. She wanted both paths and wouldn't let me stand in her way. She wasn't willing to give him up and wanted my approval. I believe this is your decision. After dinner, I'll tuck the boys in, then we can explore our options. Tomorrow, I'll pack my things and stay with my brother. Rising, I exited to the kitchen, a refuge amidst turmoil. It's odd how the kitchen becomes a sanctuary in dire times. Strange thoughts arise when your world falls apart. It's a strange feeling, realizing your world is falling apart. Laura was busying herself with dinner, while I tried to focus on spending quality time with the boys in the playroom. We were all engrossed in their game until Laura called us for dinner. The boys and I made a noisy transition as I ushered them to the bathroom to wash up. These mundane tasks felt like the only stability in the chaos. Dinner was lively. The boys were full of energy, enjoying the meal and each other's company. This was a stark contrast to their subdued parents, both lost in thought over the difficult decisions ahead. The innocence of childhood slipping away is heartbreaking. Why do kids yearn to grow up? They see adult freedom as endless, unaware of the heavy consequences and responsibilities. Adults know better, but some, like Laura, choose to ignore these boundaries. After dinner, Laura took care of the kitchen while I put the boys to bed. We shared stories until they fell asleep, their dreams untouched by the turmoil around them. My heart ached as I watched them, knowing this peaceful routine was about to end. Downstairs, I collapsed into a chair, feeling my world slipping away beyond my control. Despite my deep love for Laura, her words kept echoing in my mind. He never made me feel this way, and I'm his strumpet. There was no coming back from that. As I pondered the future, the love I had for her seemed to extinguish. Laura entered the room and sat down. "We need to talk. I understand you're upset, but you need to see things from my perspective. What I have with Matt is purely physical, driven by novelty. It will fade soon, but right now, I can't break away. It's what stimulates me, but it doesn't affect my love for you. He's just a distraction, nothing more. This will end soon, and we can get back to how things were. You just need to let it run its course." Her words were clear, but I struggled to grasp them. I can't resist this. I can't stop seeing him. Should I allow this to continue? Is she irrational or just deluded? Regardless, it has to end. Clearly, you're the one who's out of touch with reality. There's no us, no we. It's just you and him now. We're finished. This isn't up for negotiation, and I won't budge. You need to understand this. After 8 years of marriage, you can't seriously expect me to accept your affair. But I love you. You're the only man I've ever loved. I don't even care about Matt. Please try to understand. Give me time, please. For the sake of our marriage and our family, give me time. Take all the time you need. Tomorrow I'm contacting a lawyer. We'll divide everything equally. I don't want to hurt you like you hurt me. I just want this to end now. Emotionally drained, I longed for bed, seeking respite from the heartache. My headache had subsided, but the emotional pain remained. Yet I wasn't prepared for her next words. "Then damn you. No divorce. I'll fight you every step of the way and take everything you have. I'll make sure you don't get custody of the boys and restrict your visitation rights as much as possible. If you don't comply, you'll lose everything, and I'll still have Matt. You can't stop me. Remember that." I absorbed her threat. Then it struck me. This marriage had been over long ago. Her anger and disrespect weren't sudden. They were calculated and deliberate. She never worried about hurting me. If she had, she wouldn't have started this affair. She anticipated my discovery, and instead of ending it, she chose to inflict the maximum amount of pain on me. Love had no place here, only greed and a desire to degrade me. As my anger simmered, I saw her face change. She realized she had gone too far. Her expression, twisted by her venomous words, shifted from satisfaction to fear. My response followed. "I have one thing to say, Laura. When you corner a rat, it fights back. It will fight to the bitter end if it has no way out. You should have known that before pushing me. But now you've done it, and you'll pay the price. Please, I don't want this. I love you and will do anything to keep you from leaving. If you don't understand and accept this, I'll fight you. You'll have no choice but to stay with me. I know you. You love me, and the boys too much to leave. I know you. You'll stay. Goodbye, Laura. Tell the boys I'll see them when I can. I'll gather some belongings and leave. I'll get the rest later when we can arrange a time." Upstairs, I hastily packed a bag for a day or two, just essentials from the bathroom, a few changes of clothes. Not much. After 8 years of marriage, all that remained were bitter memories. But I had 2 wonderful sons, and they were my focus now. Descending, I found Laura by the kitchen door, ready to plead again. "Please reconsider. I'm begging you. There's no need for this. Promise me you'll end things with him. You'll never see him again. Just say it, and maybe we can fix this." "I can't. I just can't. Please." I pushed past her, fighting the urge to lash out, but I knew I had to control my anger. "I'll visit in the evenings after work, so the boys won't notice anything right away." I swung open the door and stepped outside. It slammed shut behind me as I tossed my bag into the back seat and climbed into my truck. Backing out of the driveway, I called my brother Samuel. He lived about 10 miles away. Since his wife left with her boyfriend 2 years ago, he'd been living alone, indifferent to her absence. Despite not divorcing, Samuel hadn't let it hold him back. He'd become a regular drinker, often indulging with his buddies almost every night. We talked about it, but Samuel never changed. He rarely got drunk, just stayed perpetually buzzed. Maybe he was trying to bury memories. At least that's how I saw it. He listened as I explained the situation and told me to come over. He'd be home later, so I drove to his place, retrieved the spare key from under the flower pot on the porch, and let myself in. Everything was immaculate, as always. Samuel was compulsively tidy, always had been. It offered a sense of solace, seeing that despite my life crumbling, his remained unchanged. I grabbed a few beers from the fridge and settled in, just as he'd advised. By the time he returned, I was pleasantly buzzed. I fetched another beer and continued drinking. When Samuel arrived, I told him about the fight with Laura. He joined me, drinking his beer to keep me company. He assured me of his support, emphasizing our bond as brothers. The next morning, I awoke with a brutal hangover and a pounding headache. My excessive drinking was my own doing, despite having reasons. I had no excuse. I stumbled into the shower, letting the cold water wash away the last traces of alcohol from my system. Being drunk wasn't going to solve anything. I found a note from Samuel saying he was at work and would cover for me. We both had Saturday shifts, so this wasn't a surprise. Samuel and I worked for a company that rented out heavy construction equipment to major contractors across the state. Our reputation as top-notch mechanics brought in customers from all over. Our job was to keep the machinery running smoothly, no matter what. The work demanded long hours but provided the income necessary to support my family, a responsibility I couldn't ignore. I knew I had to keep earning the money that supported Laura's pride and joy, our spacious house. I saw it as a haven for our family, a symbol of my hard work. But Laura viewed it differently. To her, it was a safety net, a bargaining chip for a potential divorce. She coveted the house and my earnings, not for our family's security, but to fund her lover's indulgences, lavish clothes, trips, and lingerie. I turned the water up, trying to drown out these unsettling thoughts. Even though I was running late, I needed to get to work where I could focus, plan, and make decisions, things I couldn't do in my current state. Laura had clearly planned this, knowing that finding out about her affair would leave me reeling. She had manipulated the situation to make me look like the bad guy for being angry about her infidelity, stacking the deck in her favor. I dressed quickly and grabbed some large trash bags, anticipating Laura's departure with the boys to her mother's house. I emptied my closet and drawers into the bags, collecting essential items from the bathroom into a smaller bag. Laden with bags, I loaded them into my truck's back seat and went back inside. I wasn't leaving just yet. I planned to return after work to see the kids. I had a lot to think about and decisions to make. One thing was certain. My marriage was over, and Laura would never again be my wife, lover, or confidant. She belonged to someone else now. As I thought about it, tears welled up uncontrollably, and I sank to the floor of what once was our bedroom, overwhelmed by grief. Loss is heavy, especially at work. I threw myself into my duties, working through lunch breaks, eager to drown out thoughts of home, wife, and children. I tackled the toughest tasks without complaint, consumed by a need to bury myself in work. 10 hours later, Samuel interrupted, urging me to take a break. "Dude, ease up. You're making the rest of us look bad," he said, watching me with a mix of surprise and concern. "Sorry, little brother. Just trying to lose myself in it all. Just trying to forget." I must have seemed on the verge of tears as Samuel guided me off the shop floor and into the break area. Samuel and I had been inseparable since our parents' tragic accident a decade ago. He was my best man at the wedding, and 8 years ago, he became the godfather to my boys, Jake and Ryan. Seated at the table, I stared blankly as Samuel poured us each a cup of hot coffee. It was flavorless but comforting in its warmth. "All right, spill it. Lay it all out, no holding back," Samuel encouraged, prompting me to recount the ordeal in detail. For the next 10 minutes, I poured out to Samuel every ounce of shame, humiliation, and anger Laura had heaped upon me. I told him about her menacing threats and her calculated attempts to undermine any retaliation on my part while protecting her affair. I recounted the disdain on her face as she bragged to Megan about her tryst and the cold determination in her threats to strip me of everything. She made it clear that her lover's gratification was more important than anything, unwilling to give him up for any reason. Samuel was stunned. He had always thought highly of Laura, seeing her as a virtuous woman and dedicated mother. I had never hinted at any marital issues, leading Samuel to believe our marriage was solid. Now faced with the reality of my pain and anguish, it hurt Samuel just to witness it. I had always been a pillar of strength, a devoted father, a reliable provider, and a trusted friend to the guys in the garage, always there when needed. Over the years, I had gone above and beyond to help others. Samuel's shock turned to anger. How could Laura do this to me? What was wrong with her? His indignation grew as he saw his brother and closest friend shattered and defeated. Listen to me. You can't just accept this. We have to take action. Let me and the guys help you. This is unbearable, Samuel urged, concern etched on his rugged features. His genuine care for his brother was clear. I met his gaze with a despondent look. What can I do? If I divorce her, she'll take everything. Child support, alimony, the house, the car. You know I'd never hurt the kids. She's using them against me. And now that idiot she's fooling around with will replace their father. He thinks it's okay to sleep with another man's wife. I'm powerless. Samuel shook his head. To hell with both of them. I used to love Laura like a sister, but she's made her bed, and now she'll have to lie in it. We need to go after both of them. First step, figure out who he is. That's the easy part. Let me make some calls, then we'll talk. I shrugged. All right, but I don't know what you expect me to do. She doesn't tell me anything about him. Doesn't matter. We'll track him down and expose him like we would anyone else. And you realize you can't take Laura back, right? What she did makes reconciliation impossible. If you let this slide, she'll never respect you again. No way, man. She's someone else's plaything now. His words caught me off guard, but then a faint smile crept onto my face. You're right. She's not my wife anymore. Last night showed me how quickly love can turn to hate, and my hatred for her now overshadows any love I ever had. She stole that from me and turned it against herself. We continued talking for a bit, then wrapped up work without putting in any extra hours. We headed to a nearby bar, not to get drunk but to make plans. Samuel made a few more calls, and we sat down to strategize. I was touched by the unwavering support from my friends. They didn't pry, they just wanted to know how they could help. Together, we devised a plan. At 7 that evening, I pulled into my driveway and walked into the house. It struck me as funny. This was no longer my home, just a place to stay. Shedding my jacket in the kitchen, I made my way to the living room. There Laura sat, watching Jake and Ryan, our 5-year-old twins, engrossed in a video game. I stood there, capturing the scene in my mind forever. Laura met my gaze, her faint smile now showing its true contempt for me and the sham of our family unity. It was all a facade, orchestrated by her deception. Now I saw and understood. I returned her gaze with a look of pure disdain, devoid of any smile. When I turned away, Laura averted her eyes and walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and pulled out some leftover fried chicken and mashed potatoes, reheating them in the microwave. I wasn't hungry, but I needed a distraction. Samuel had advised me to postpone talking to the boys about the situation for now, suggesting it was best to wait. When I do address them, it will mark the first step in the battle initiated by Laura. I might have lost her, but I would fight to the end. Seated with my plate, I began to eat slowly. The food offered little satisfaction but was necessary for sustenance. Halfway through, Laura joined me at the table, sitting across from me. I glanced at her briefly before returning my focus to my meal, chewing deliberately. There were no words exchanged. I had nothing to say to her at that moment. Are you feeling more composed after last night? Can we have a civilized conversation now? Her words caught me off guard. Civilized adults? How about a cheating wife and her betrayed husband? That's more realistic, I thought. Opting for silence, I withheld my response. Are you going to ignore me now? Acting childish and silent? I expected better from you. We need to consider the children now. Remember your role as their father. Am I truly their father? It makes me wonder. Maybe I should confirm with some tests, I said calmly. Let's keep this civil without anger, just a simple statement. Laura's expression darkened with fury, ready to retort, but I calmly interjected, watch your tone, Laura. The children might overhear if you start shouting. Remember them, the ones you accused me of neglecting last night when I got upset. Now it's your turn to reflect. Reflect on what you've done to their world. Not only did you have an affair, you shattered our entire family. Think carefully, Laura. She paused, lowering her voice to a hiss. You didn't consider my words last night. I expected you to move past this and return to normal. Nothing will change at home. I still love you and you are my husband, That hasn't changed. Neither you nor the children will lose anything familiar. I keep my affairs discreet, doing my business when they're at school and you're at work. You have nothing to lose as I'm always here for you. I remained silent, continuing to eat methodically. I kept a stoic expression, showing no reaction. Despite the absence of verbal response, my eyes conveyed everything. Slowly, Laura began to grasp the gravity of the situation. For the first time, a hint of fear flickered through her. What do you intend to do? Will you make things difficult for me? I hoped you loved me enough to grant me this time alone. I told you last night that he didn't take anything from you, and that I'll always support you. Why can't you grasp that? Laura grew increasingly emotional while I continued to stare at her calmly. Finally, I swallowed my food and suggested, let's save this discussion for after the kids are in bed. I listened to you last night despite my discomfort, but I won't entertain this conversation while the children are awake. Laura seemed to regain her composure and resumed smiling. Thank you for that. I think you had some valid points, but your words hurt me. I'll take the boys upstairs soon and then we can talk. She walked past me, placing her hand on my shoulder. I involuntarily flinched at her touch, causing her to retract her hand. The disgust I felt from that simple gesture was palpable. With the kids, I tried to maintain my usual self, though knowing everything was about to change weighed heavily on me. Yet I had come to terms with the fact that Laura's actions had shattered it all for me. Perhaps I should just play the role of the compliant husband and accept her terms. Wait until she's done with her affair. After all, hadn't she claimed she still loved me and wanted to remain married? But I knew I couldn't do it. Not now. Not ever again. Around 9 o'clock, Laura entered the room where I sat, letting out a heavy sigh. She settled into a chair and smiled. I put them to bed, and they fell asleep. They're getting too big to tuck in, but they still say goodnight and pretend to sleep. They're good boys. I nodded in agreement. They're wonderful kids. It's unfortunate that they'll have to endure so much pain, and I'm unsure how to ease their suffering. What do you mean? I thought you understood that nothing needs to change. Just give me what I want, and we can return to being the same family we were. Just be patient. I promised it would all be over soon. You won't lose anything. I love you deeply and want to remain your wife. It's just something I have to do, that's all. I gazed at the woman who had been my wife for the past 8 years. I married her because I couldn't imagine life without her. We had 2 amazing children and a solid marriage. Until last night. Now everything was different, and she couldn't comprehend why. I wouldn't delve into the specifics tonight, but I needed to be unequivocal. Laura, I heard you out last night. You made your desires clear. You claimed you love me and want to be my wife. You insist he doesn't take anything from me, refuse to disclose his identity because it's none of my business, and outline the consequences if I pursue a divorce. You made it abundantly clear that you'll strip everything from me without hesitation, just as you stated. You threatened to take everything, even my boys. That much was evident. Laura listened, her face displaying anger. She wasn't pleased with my recap of her words. However they sounded, they resonated differently coming from me. But she recognized the truth in what I conveyed. I perceive that you don't view this situation the same way I do, Jake. I emphasized that this isn't about our marriage, yet you didn't heed my words. Why can't you trust me when I express that I still love you and desire to uphold our marriage? What I heard from you last night, Laura, was disdain. Disdain toward me and our marriage. When I expressed frustration, you retaliated with premeditated threats. Threats that you had carefully considered before addressing me. Disdain for me, for all my efforts on our behalf over the years. You belittled me, degraded me, threatened me, and accused me of misunderstanding. You were fully aware that I would react just as I did. Why did you presume to have already determined what to do with me? Why did you think you had all the answers? My anger was starting to surface. Up until now, I had managed to stay composed, but my control was slipping. Laura's enraged expression fueled my frustration. There's one conclusion you missed last night, Laura. When you cornered me with threats, thinking I had no way out, I warned you then, and I'll say it again. Even a rat will fight back when it has nothing left to lose. With that, I stood up and walked away. As I reached the kitchen door where Laura was seated, I paused. I'm going to stay elsewhere tonight. I'll come back after work so the kids won't notice anything right away. Why are you leaving? Why not stay here? We can't resolve this if you go. Jake, please don't. I love you and don't want to lose you. I don't know what I'll do if you leave me. Please, Jake, let's try to work this out. There must be a way to fix this. I'm sorry, Laura. The only certainty I have now is that I no longer love you. Your betrayal last night killed all my feelings for you. That's the one thing I know for sure. I don't know what I'll do next, but there's no turning back now. Jake, what about our vows to love and cherish each other? Have you forgotten them? I remember them well. You vowed to forsake all others, but you didn't. You promised to love only me, but you gave what was ours to another man. I cared for you, loved you, kept our vows, and gave you everything. It wasn't enough. You gave what was mine to someone else, breaking my heart in the process. So yes, I can move past this. You destroyed my love for you. I can leave, and I will. I headed to Samuel's house, where he welcomed me to stay as long as needed. It was time to finish what we started. Soon, it would all be over, and I could begin anew. Over the next few days, I balanced work with evenings spent with my kids. I avoided any interaction with Laura. Despite her attempts to talk, I walked away each time. Once she yelled, but I simply left without a word. During a break at work, a colleague informed Samuel that preparations were complete and we'd have results in a few days. All that remained was patience. The routine continued unchanged until the following week. Each evening I returned to an increasingly agitated Laura. The kids seemed oblivious, but Jake's question about my long hours prompted reassurance. He seemed satisfied, and the momentary crisis passed. Laura persisted with questions, but I ignored her, leaving when she took the kids to bed. By the end of the week, Samuel came into the break room and handed me a folder without a word. I opened it to find a brief report. Matt Bennett, a 24-year-old junior attorney, divorced 2 years ago, financially stable, living in a condo where Laura had visited several times that week. Now, armed with a name and address, I wondered what drew her to him. Yet it was no longer my concern. If Laura had come to me earlier, maybe we could have resolved this differently. So what's next? What steps should I take? I asked Samuel, seeking his guidance. Though the issue was mine, Samuel seemed to take charge. I was lucky to have friends and a brother like Samuel. Being a good man and diligent worker sufficed for true friends. Now, I needed them more than ever. Everything's set. The first move happens tonight. I'll call you when it's done. Keep your phone close. You can inform her and end this mess, okay? Knowing it needed to be done didn't bring relief. This wasn't how I wanted things to go. But Laura and her lover left me no choice. I wasn't a lawyer or a wealthy strategist. I was a mechanic, a hardworking man who took pride in providing for his family. I loved Laura deeply, but my efforts weren't enough for her. Fine. My plan fit my world, and she'd soon realize it. Returning home, I joined my family for dinner as usual. Laura engaged with the kids, and I participated in conversations and activities, hiding my nervousness. After dinner, I spent quality time with the kids, playing video games and helping with homework, playing the role of the typical husband and father. Laura, finishing the dishes, watched us, seeming more relaxed, perhaps thinking everything would soon return to normal. As I played video games with my boys, Matt Bennett left his office, headed to his car parked across town. He thought about his intense encounter with Laura at his place 2 days earlier. She was eager for him, for the first time getting closer. When he asked why, she revealed her husband had discovered their affair. Shocked, Matt was reassured by her not to worry. It struck him as odd that her husband's knowledge seemed to heighten her adventurousness. Despite this, it was the best physical engagement he'd had, so he brushed it off. Walking past an alley toward his car, he suddenly stumbled, feeling a pull. As he struggled to maintain his balance, someone grabbed his arms and pulled him down the alley. Pinned against the wall by 2 large figures, one on each side, he strained to see their faces under their black ski masks. Despite their size, fear crept over him. With little cash and no flashy accessories, he wondered what they wanted. A third masked man, wearing gloves, stepped forward and grabbed Matt's face with a firm grip under his chin. "You know a woman named Laura Johnson?" the man asked in a coarse voice. The mention of her name sent a shiver down Matt's spine. Oh no, her husband must have sent them, he thought. "No, I don't know anyone by that name," he stammered, trying to deny everything. The hefty man delivered a blow to his ribs, causing excruciating pain and knocking the breath out of him. Dizzy, Matt saw stars. The pain gripped him, filling him with fear. "I'll ask again. Do you know Laura Johnson?" Unable to keep up the lie, Matt gave in. "Yes, I know her. Please let me go," he prayed silently. "You'll never see her again. Got it?" The man awaited his response. "Crystal clear." "Got it," Matt said, hoping it was just a warning. "I need to make sure you understand fully. We're not convinced you're smart enough to stay away from other men's wives, so we're going to help you understand," the big man explained ominously. They released their grip, letting him steady himself. The first blow struck him hard in the groin, making him double over. Despite his agony, they kept him from falling, delivering another blow to his ribs. A sharp crack signaled a broken rib. Then came a punch to his jaw, nearly knocking him out. More blows followed, each one worse than the last, until mercifully he blacked out. They probably kept hitting him even after he lost consciousness. When he woke up in hospital's emergency room, his injuries weren't life-threatening, but the ordeal left him deeply shaken. He was admitted to the general care unit, heavily medicated and in severe pain. Grateful for his survival, he whispered a prayer. They informed him that she might contact him and instructed him precisely what to say. He committed the words to memory. "I deeply apologize, Mrs. Johnson. It was my fault, and I deeply regret it. I will cease all contact with you and your children. I'm sorry our paths ever crossed. Farewell." Matt reclined on the bed, repeating the phrases in his mind. He knew any deviation could lead to severe consequences. He vowed never to pursue a married woman again. Around 8 in the evening, while playing with the twins, my cell phone rang. Excusing myself to another room, I took the call. Seeing Samuel's caller ID, I heard a brief message. "It's done. Lesson 1 completed. He's in the hospital." Then the call ended. Returning to the living room with a smile, Laura noticed but said nothing, interpreting it as good news. Later, Laura took the children upstairs, casting a questioning glance at me. Assuring her I'd be there when she returned, she smiled broadly and went about putting the children to bed. Settling into the living room, I waited in anticipation. The moment of reckoning had arrived. As Laura returned with a coffee pot and cups, she suggested we talk further. Noting my apparent resignation, she expressed relief, professing her love and fear of losing me over what she considered trivial matters compared to the depth of our relationship. I observed her as she spoke, her beauty still captivating me after all these years. She was the woman I had cherished for so long, envisioning a future of growing old together. But now, those plans and dreams lay shattered. "Let's get to the point, Laura. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully," I began. "I know your lover's name is Matt Bennett, a junior associate at Lincoln, Rice, and Holmes. I know all about him, including your 2 meetings with him this week." Laura appeared surprised, poised to respond, but I motioned for her to remain silent. "That's the issue. You threatened me with divorce when I expressed my anger. You threatened to take everything I have. I remember your exact words. 'I'll take everything you have.' Those words shattered our marriage and pushed me into a corner. I told you that cornered rats fight back." I could see the initial flickers of fear and discomfort on her face. She wasn't sure what lay ahead, but knew it wouldn't be good. Her shoulders tensed, and she instinctively withdrew her head. "I know you told Megan that I never made you feel the way he did, that you were his mistress. I don't regret that this will end unfavorably for you. Mr. Bennett has been explicitly informed that his involvement with you is over. He'll never see you again or have any further contact with you. He was also warned to stay away from my sons." Watching her face register shock and disbelief, I continued, "I'll initiate divorce proceedings citing infidelity. There will be no spousal support for you. Child support will be provided for my sons to ensure they lack nothing, as long as you fulfill your duties. You'll need to work for your own desires. I'll handle the paperwork, and you'll be served." Laura stood up, anger evident on her face. "You're delusional if you think I'll agree to this. I'll take everything you have, just as I promised," she retorted, still defiant despite her fear. She intended to bluff until the very end. "Why don't you call your Mr. Bennett right now? Let's see his response. Oh wait, I believe you might need to dial the hospital. That call I received earlier informed me he's in the emergency room at Memorial. I assume you've heard the news by now. Use my phone. I already have his number. Laura stared at me in shock. What have you done? What happened to Matt? Oh my God, Jake, what did you do? Why, Laura, are you seriously asking me? I've been here at home with you all evening, and I was at work earlier, so I couldn't have done anything to anyone. Why do you think I did something? Why would I harm your lover? You made it clear that I should stay out of this. It's none of my concern. My demeanor must have frightened Laura. She had never seen me like this. I was typically calm and passive, never causing harm to anyone. Now she viewed me differently. My expression was cold and stern, my eyes devoid of emotion. Laura entered the next room, and I overheard her speaking on the phone. She returned with tears in her eyes, collapsing into a chair and staring into the distance. I remained composed, picking up the newspaper. I knew what she had heard. Her lover was ending things with her, faced with the choice of that or enduring a beating each time he encountered her. That was the ultimatum delivered to him by 3 imposing men who intercepted him as he left work. They made it clear why they targeted him and what repercussions awaited if he dared to see or speak to Laura again. Laura dried her tears, took a deep breath, and addressed me. Well, it seems you've gotten your way. Matt told me he never wants to see me again. He mentioned that all my belongings will be returned to me and that he has no desire to communicate with me. In that case, you have nothing to worry about. I have legal representation, so they will handle everything swiftly, I responded, setting the newspaper aside and rising to leave. I'll speak with the boys this weekend and explain why we're divorcing. Perhaps they're mature enough to grasp the situation. If not, they'll eventually understand as they grow older. As I made my exit, I glanced back to see Laura sobbing. If I recall your words correctly, Laura, you once claimed this affair would be short-lived and we could return to normal. I chuckled bitterly. You're still young and attractive, Laura. Maybe you'll find someone willing to indulge your fantasies, someone open to an unconventional marriage allowing you to pursue multiple partners. That wasn't me, but that's just my perspective. Best of luck. Children may not comprehend this, but adults must face the consequences of their actions, and those consequences can be harsh.